My name is Amanda Kirby, 28 years old. At a crowded family dinner in a Kansas City steakhouse, I froze as my dad leaned across the table, his voice cutting through the noise around us. "You're just an extra, Amanda. Only your brother is worthy of pride." My mom nodded, her smile sharp, agreeing without a second thought. The words landed like a punch, but I'd spent my whole life hearing different versions of them. My fork hovered midair, my heart pounding. Everyone went silent, eyes fixed on me. My brothers smirked, basking in the spotlight as always. They expected me to shrink back to stay quiet like I had for years. But this time, something inside me snapped. I set my fork down, locked eyes with my dad, and said, "Fine. Just wait and see." Then I walked out, leaving behind their stunned faces. That night, I made a decision not just to prove them wrong, but to make them beg me to come back and help. So what do you think? Should I forgive my parents? Or let them face the consequences on their own? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you have to say. I grew up knowing my family's world revolved around my brother. I watched my parents' eyes light up when he stumbled through a school play, clapping like he'd just starred on Broadway, while my straight-A report cards barely earned a glance. Once I brought home a math award I had worked on for weeks. Dad skimmed it, muttered, "Good job, sweetheart," and turned to admire my brother's messy finger painting. Mom hung it on the fridge, calling it a masterpiece, inviting neighbors to see it. I stood there, my certificate crumpling in my hands, feeling invisible. Birthdays weren't any better. Mine meant socks, a notebook, or a few dollars in an envelope, while his were full of balloons, custom cakes, and expensive gifts. When I asked why, Mom would just say, "He's special, Amanda. Don't be selfish." I swallowed the sting, hoping one day they'd finally see me. At 14, I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious high school. My parents barely nodded, too distracted by my brother's mediocre grades. They even threw him a pizza party for trying hard. I sat in silence while everyone gushed over his potential. My trophies from debate and academics collected dust in my room. At 15, I won a coding competition presenting an app I had built from scratch. The prize was a plaque and a small gift card. I brought it home, heart racing. Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice," before turning to my brother's new idea for a coffee shop he'd scribbled on a napkin. They gave him money to start planning. He spent it on sneakers. My plaque went into a drawer. The pattern never changed. I got a part-time job, saved every penny, and bought a used laptop to teach myself to code at night while my brother partied. My best friend would come over, watch me type, and whisper, "You're building something real, Amanda. They'll regret ignoring you." Every overlooked success, every dismissed effort carved a truth into me. My family had chosen their star, and it wasn't me. But their blindness gave me clarity. I didn't need their applause to keep going. I just needed to outwork everyone else. That's when I started planning for something bigger. I decided to take control of my future. My part-time job at the bookstore became my lifeline. I stacked shelves after school, saving every dollar in a secret account my parents didn't know about. While my brother was handed cash for his latest whim, a food truck that never left the driveway, I bought a used laptop with my own money. Late at night, the glow of the screen was my only companion as I taught myself to code from free online tutorials. HTML, CSS, Python. I absorbed it all, building small websites for practice, then for local businesses who paid me modest fees. My parents barely noticed. Mom would pass by my room and say, "Don't strain your eyes, Amanda." Dad grunted, too busy wiring money for my brother's next big thing, a boutique or a coffee shop that collapsed within weeks. I stopped expecting their praise. Their indifference fueled me. I'd code until the early hours, fueled by instant coffee and a stubborn belief that I could do this on my own. Soon, I began freelancing. My first project was designing a website for a local bakery, earning a few $100s after weeks of revisions. I kept it to myself. My parents were too busy celebrating another one of my brother's doomed ventures. My best friend would swing by after her shift bringing leftover fries and grinning at my work. "You're a machine, Amanda. They have no idea what they're overlooking." By the time high school ended, I earned a partial scholarship to a university with a strong tech program. It wasn't enough, and my parents refused to help. They were pouring money into my brother's newest scheme. So I doubled down, taking on clients through online platforms, e-commerce sites, buggy apps, booking systems for salons. Every dollar went into tuition books, and eventually a better laptop. I worked from the library with earbuds in, shutting out the world. My grades stayed high, my portfolio grew, and my bank account slowly climbed. Moving into my dorm, I carried everything in just a couple of bags. My parents didn't show they were at a trade show hyping my brother's revolutionary clothing line that collapsed before launch. I didn't care. I was free, finally living on my own terms. My best friend helped me unpack, joking about my tiny fridge. "You're gonna run the world from this closet." Her faith kept me going. College was tough, but I thrived. I joined coding clubs, took extra computer science courses, and kept freelancing to cover expenses. Clients ranged from startups to mom-and-pop shops, all trusting me with apps and websites. One big project, a mobile app for a gym chain, took months of late nights, but earned me $8,000. I reinvested it into software and a decent chair for my cramped apartment. My best friend and I celebrated with cheap pizza and soda, laughing about how far I'd come. My parents never knew. They were too busy bailing my brother out of yet another flop. Every late night, every line of code, every client email pushed me forward. My family's dismissal didn't stop me, it made me hungrier. I wasn't just building apps, I was building my way out. And that hunger carried me to the next chapter. At 25, I stood on the cusp of something big. I'd been invited to a tech conference in Kansas City to receive an award for an app I'd built, a fitness tracker that caught the eye of local startups. Months of late nights refining code and pitching to judges had led to this moment. I'd sent my parents an invitation, even booked them a spot at the gala. I didn't expect them to come, but a small part of me hoped they'd show up, see me on stage, and finally acknowledge my work. I spent weeks preparing my speech, practicing in front of my mirror, heart racing at the thought of holding that award. The night of the conference, I stood backstage in a rented dress, clutching my note cards. The auditorium buzzed with hundreds of attendees, tech founders, investors, professors. My best friend sat in the front row, her thumbs up steadying my nerves. As my name was called, I walked to the podium, the spotlight warm on my face. "Amanda Kirby for outstanding innovation," the host announced. I gripped the sleek glass trophy, my voice steady, as I thanked my mentors and clients. The crowd clapped, some standing. I scanned the seats for mom and dad. Empty. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile, delivering my speech without a hitch. Afterward, I joined my best friend at our table. She squeezed my hand, whispering, "You were incredible, Amanda." I nodded, but the absence of my family gnawed at me. I checked my phone, no texts, no missed calls. Later, I called Mom, hoping for an explanation. She picked up, her voice distracted. "Oh, Amanda, we meant to come, but your brother threw a barbecue at his place. You know how he loves hosting. We couldn't miss it." I heard laughter and music in the background, the clink of glasses. Dad chimed in. "It's a big deal for him, sweetheart. You understand?" I didn't. I hung up, my hands shaking. The next day, my best friend dragged me to a coffee shop to talk. I told her about the call, how my parents chose my brother's backyard party over my moment. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "Amanda, they don't get to define you. You built that app. You earned that award. They're missing out, not you." Her words hit hard. I'd spent years chasing their approval, molding myself to fit their expectations, only to be sidelined for a barbecue. My brother hadn't even launched anything new, just threw a party with their money. I pictured them grilling burgers, toasting his charisma, while I stood alone on that stage. I went home and replayed the night in my head. The applause, the weight of the trophy, the empty seats where my parents should have been. I thought about every time I'd pushed forward coding at midnight, juggling client deadlines, paying my own way through college. All while my brother coasted on their support, his half-baked ideas collapsing one after another. A clothing line that never shipped a pop-up cafe that lasted a weekend, yet they celebrated him like a visionary. I'd been fighting for scraps of their attention, but for what? To be called an extra at a family party, to be skipped for a barbecue. My best friend's voice echoed, "You don't need them." She was right. I'd built this life, my skills, my clients, my award without their help. I didn't need their applause to keep going. Sitting on my couch, staring at the trophy on my coffee table, I felt a shift. I wasn't coding for them anymore. I wasn't living for their approval. I was doing this for me. My parents could keep their blind devotion to my brother. I'd keep building not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. That realization became my new foundation. I moved into a small house on the edge of Kansas City, a place I'd saved for with every freelance paycheck. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine: hardwood floors, a tiny porch, and a spare room I turned into a home office. I hung up framed prints from local artists, set up a coffee maker, and bought a couch that didn't scream college dorm. My best friend helped me move hauling boxes and joking about my adulting glow-up. We spent the first night eating takeout on the floor, laughing until we couldn't breathe. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. My days filled with new rhythms. I'd wake early, answer emails from startup clients, and tweak code for my fitness app, which was gaining traction with gyms across the state. But work wasn't my whole life anymore. I joined a book club, went hiking with coworkers on weekends, and started cooking badly at first, but I got better. My best friend would swing by teasing my burnt pancakes, but staying for hours to talk about everything and nothing. I built a circle of people who saw me not as an extra, but as Amanda Sharp, driven and enough. My parents didn't know about the house. I didn't tell them. The last time we spoke, Mom called to gush about my brother's latest business venture, a custom hat line that was already losing money. "He's so creative," she said, as if I'd asked. I didn't mention my app's new partnership with a fitness chain or the house I'd bought. Why bother? They'd never cared before. Dad texted once asking if I was still doing that computer stuff. I didn't reply. Their world was my brother's, not mine. One weekend, my best friend and I hosted a game night at my place. My coworkers came bringing board games and cheap wine. We laughed over bad dice rolls and argued about rules until midnight. One of them, a designer named Sarah, pulled me aside. "You've got this whole life figured out, Amanda," she said. I shook my head, but her words stuck. I wasn't chasing my family's approval anymore. I was building a life that felt full, friends who showed up, work that challenged me, a home that was mine. My startup kept growing, but I didn't let it define me. I hired 2 developers to handle the app's updates, freeing me to focus on strategy and new ideas. We pitched to investors, landed a small funding round, and planned to expand the app to new markets. I loved the work, but I loved my freedom more, choosing my hours, my priorities, my people. My best friend noticed the change. "You're different, Amanda," she said one night over coffee. "Lighter. Like you're finally you." I smiled, knowing she was right. A month later, Mom called out of the blue. I braced myself for another monologue about my brother. Instead, she asked what I was doing. I mentioned the house, keeping it vague. Her response was a dismissive hum. "So you're just working an office job," she said. I almost laughed. My startup was on track to clear 6 figures that year, but to her, I was pushing papers. Dad jumped in, saying, "Your brother's got a real vision. You should see his new designs." I hung up, their words bouncing off me. They didn't know me, and I was done caring. I started saying no to their calls, letting them go to voicemail. My brother sent a text once asking for a loan to tide him over. I ignored it. My life wasn't theirs to claim anymore. I went to concerts with my book club friends, took a pottery class on a whim, and planned a road trip with my best friend to see the Ozarks. Every choice was mine, every moment deliberate. I wasn't proving anything to my family, I was living for the person I'd become. My house became my sanctuary, a space where I could breathe. I'd sit on my porch at night, sipping tea, listening to crickets. My best friend would join me sometimes, and we'd talk about dreams, hers to open a cafe, mine to keep building a life that felt true. I'd done it. Not for them, but for me. That freedom changed everything. My life had finally found its rhythm, but my family's world was beginning to crack. One evening, my phone lit up with Mom's name. I ignored it, assuming it was another monologue about my brother's genius. But then, it buzzed again. And again. By the 15th call, I sighed and picked up. Her voice was frantic, not the usual proud chirp. "Amanda, we're in trouble," she said, words tumbling out. Their savings were gone, sunk into my brother's latest flop, a high-end clothing store that collapsed under bad loans and worse decisions. They'd taken out a second mortgage to fund it, certain he'd strike gold. Now they were broke, facing foreclosure. "We need your help." She pleaded, her tone sharp with desperation. I sat on my couch, stunned. For years, they'd bankrolled my brother's failures, coffee shops, sneaker brands, pop-up cafes, while dismissing my work. Now they were calling me. I asked what happened. Mom admitted they'd poured everything into the store, ignoring warnings from their accountant. My brother had promised a fashion empire, but his cheap designs didn't sell and creditors were circling. Dad got on the line, his voice shaky. "We saw you on TV, Amanda. That startup of yours? It's big now, isn't it? Maybe you could help us out." I froze. They'd seen my interview on a local news channel talking about my fitness app's expansion. They hadn't called to congratulate me. They called because they were desperate. I hung up, my mind spinning. My best friend came over that night, sensing my mood. I told her about the calls, the foreclosure, their sudden interest after years of silence. She leaned back, sipping her tea. "They only want you now because they're out of options," she said. "Think hard before you do anything, Amanda." Her words were steady, but I could see her worry. She knew how deep their neglect had cut me. I paced my living room, memories flooding back, Dad calling me an extra at that steakhouse party, Mom choosing my brother's barbecue over my award ceremony. Every ignored achievement, every dismissed effort played like a loop in my head. The next day, Dad texted, "Amanda, we're family. You can't turn your back on us. Your brother needs a fresh start." I stared at the message, my jaw tight. They weren't asking for me. They were asking for my money, for my success they'd never cared about. I thought about my childhood, carrying report cards home to blank stares. My college years, scraping by while they funded my brother's flops. The night I stood on that stage, holding a trophy with empty seats where they should have been. They'd chosen him every time, and now they wanted me to save them. I called my best friend, needing her clarity. We met at a park, walking as I poured out my anger. "They think I owe them," I said, kicking a pebble. "After everything they think, I'll just write a check." She stopped, looking me in the eye. "You built your life without them, Amanda. You don't owe them anything. But this is your call. Make it for you, not them." Her words grounded me. I'd spent years proving myself not to them, but to myself. I'd built a house, a startup, a life, all on my own. Their crisis wasn't my burden. Mom called again that night, her voice breaking. "Amanda, we're losing the house. Please talk to us." I listened, my heart heavy but resolute. I remembered every slight, every moment they'd overlooked me. The barbecue they chose over my award. The years they called my work computer stuff while praising my brother's failures. I told her I needed time. She kept talking, begging, but I hung up, my hands steady. I wasn't their lifeline. I was mine. My best friend was right, they only saw me now because they had no one else. But their regret came too late. I'd moved on, built a life that didn't need their approval. Their crisis was their own, and I wasn't going to carry it. That clarity set the stage for what came next. I faced my family one last time at a diner in Kansas City, a place I hadn't stepped into in years. I agreed to meet curious but guarded. My startup was thriving, my fitness app now used by thousands, and I'd just bought a sleek new car, a reward for years of grinding. I pulled into the diner's lot, my heart steady but heavy. Inside, Mom, Dad, and my brother sat in a booth looking worn. Their faces lit up when they saw me, but not with pride, with hope for a lifeline. Mom started, her voice soft but urgent. "Amanda, we're in a bad spot. The bank took the house. Your brother has an idea, a new tech store. It's a sure thing. We just need an investor." Dad nodded, leaning forward. "You're doing well, Amanda. You could help us start over." My brother chimed in, his grin forced. "It's a big opportunity. I just need a little capital." I sipped my coffee, letting their words hang. They were asking me to bankroll another of his schemes, as if nothing had changed. I set my mug down, my voice calm. "Do you remember the family party at the steakhouse? You called me an extra dad, and said only my brother was worthy of pride. Mom." You nodded along, they flinched eyes darting away. I continued. "Or the barbecue you chose over my award ceremony. I stood on a stage holding a trophy I earned, while you grilled burgers for his charisma." My brother shifted, uncomfortable. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "You ignored me. My whole life poured everything into his failures. Now you want my money?" Dad's face reddened. "We're family, Amanda. You can't hold grudges." My brother added, "I've got a real plan this time." I almost laughed. His plans had bankrupted them, coffee shops, clothing lines, now this. I'd built my success alone, coding through nights, paying my own way. They'd never cared until they saw me on TV. I shook my head. "I'm not investing. You made your choices. I made mine." Mom's eyes welled up. "We're sorry, Amanda. We didn't know you'd do so much." It was the apology I'd wanted for years, but it felt hollow. Too late. I stood, leaving cash for my coffee. "I wish you well, but I'm done." I walked out, their stunned faces behind me, just like that night at the steakhouse. Only this time, I wasn't running from their words, I was choosing my peace. I drove home to my house, the one I'd bought with my own money. My best friend was waiting ready for our weekly movie night. "How'd it go?" she asked, popping popcorn. I shrugged, smiling. "It's over. I'm free." She grinned, tossing a kernel at me. My life was full, friends who showed up, a team at my startup who respected me, a new car parked in my driveway. I'd traded their approval for my own, and it was worth it. Months later, I heard from a cousin that my parents had moved into a small apartment, scraping by on odd jobs. My brother was working retail, folding clothes for minimum wage at a mall store. His tech store never materialized. They'd lost everything betting on him while dismissing me. I didn't gloat, I just kept moving forward. My app expanded to new states, my team grew, and I started mentoring young coders, sharing the lessons I'd learned the hard way. My best friend and I took that road trip to the Ozarks, laughing under the stars. I bought a painting from a local artist to hang in my office, a reminder of the life I'd built. Every choice was mine now, every success, every moment. I wasn't the extra they'd called me. I was the one who'd made it, not for them, but for me. That was my victory.
"You can't seriously think you deserve any part of Grandpa's estate," Jessica sneered, her voice rising above the murmur of departing mourners. "You're not even his real granddaughter." The memorial service for my grandfather had just ended, and most family members were filing out of the small chapel in Portland. The scent of lilies, his favorite flower, still hung in the air. "That's not fair, Jessica," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Grandpa Robert never made that distinction. I was his granddaughter, adoption or not." "Blood is blood, Hope," she said, smoothing her black dress with manicured hands. "And you don't have a drop of his. The family legacy belongs to actual family members." I felt a heaviness in my chest that had nothing to do with grief. He was my grandfather for 25 years. That counts for something. It counts for nothing legally, Jessica shot back, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Look, I'm his only biological grandchild. Everything should come to me. If you fight this, you'll just embarrass yourself. My name is Hope Smith, 27 years old, adopted as a toddler by my parents, David and Catherine. My grandfather Robert was the one person who never made me feel less than because of my adoption. He took me fishing on summer mornings, taught me to play chess, and told me stories about our family history, as if it were just as much mine as anyone else's. All I wanted was for his memory to be honored properly, for his possessions and keepsakes to be distributed as he would have wanted. Standing in my way was Jessica, my cousin who had always treated my place in the family as provisional at best, fraudulent at worst. This isn't about the money, I said, though the inheritance was substantial. Grandpa Robert had done well for himself as an architect, with properties and investments worth discussing. It's about respecting his wishes. His wishes would have been for his legacy to stay in the family, Jessica replied with a dismissive wave. Just accept reality, Hope. You're the charity case my grandparents took pity on because Aunt Catherine couldn't have children of her own. The words stung, but before I could respond, Uncle Philip, Jessica's father, approached with the family lawyer. I've scheduled a preliminary meeting about Robert's estate for next week, the lawyer, Mr. Harrison, informed us. I know this is a difficult time, but it's best to address these matters promptly. Jessica flashed me a triumphant smile. Wonderful. We can settle this quickly then. As they walked away, I noticed something fall from Mr. Harrison's portfolio, a sealed envelope with my name written in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. I quickly picked it up, but not before spotting what was written in the corner. To be opened only in the event of family dispute. My grandfather, it seemed, had anticipated this conflict, and somehow I sensed that Jessica's confidence might be more fragile than she knew. My adoption was never a secret in our family. My parents were always open about it, telling me the story of how they'd fallen in love with me the moment they saw me. I was 2 years old when they brought me home, and while I have no memories of life before them, I grew up knowing I was chosen rather than born into the family. Grandpa Robert embraced me wholeheartedly from the beginning. Family isn't about blood, he often told me. It's about who you choose to love. His wife, Grandma Eleanor, had been equally accepting until her death 5 years ago. In many ways, their unconditional love helped me navigate the occasional awkwardness of being the only adopted member of an otherwise biological family. Jessica and I were born just 3 months apart, but we could never have been more different. Where I was studious and introspective, she was social and outspoken. I pursued a career in library science, preserving history and stories. She became a real estate agent, always focused on the material value of things. Our childhood was peppered with minor competitions, usual cousin rivalry, but there had always been an undercurrent of something more hostile from her side. You're so lucky, she once told me when we were teenagers. You get to be part of the family without having to deal with the expectations. Nobody makes you learn about the family business or attend those boring historical society events. She didn't realize that I would have welcomed those expectations. Instead, I had to insert myself, always volunteering to help Grandpa with his architectural archives or asking to attend the historical society gatherings. I wanted that connection to a past I hadn't biologically shared. Grandpa seemed to understand. He made special time for me, sharing family stories and teaching me about our heritage. You're a Smith now, he'd say. That history belongs to you too. He gave me a beautiful leather-bound journal for my 18th birthday, filled with family photographs, anecdotes, and his own sketches of significant places in our family history. Jessica received a similar gift, a gold locket with Grandma Eleanor's portrait inside. She wore it occasionally, usually during family gatherings when it would be noticed, but I slept with my journal beside my bed for years. Our relationship deteriorated further after Grandpa Robert's health began to fail. Jessica visited him infrequently, always with expensive gifts, but rarely with time to spare. I visited weekly, often reading to him or simply sitting in companionable silence while he dozed. Sometimes I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, something between concern and determination. Once, when I was helping him organize his desk, I found adoption papers among his files. Not mine, but far older ones. When I asked about them, he quickly tucked them away. "That's a story for another time," he said. "When it's needed." I didn't press him then. Now I wonder if I should have. The day of the preliminary meeting arrived with a dreary Portland rain that matched my mood. I arrived early at Mr. Harrison's office, only to find Jessica and Uncle Philip already there, huddled in conversation with the lawyer. They fell silent when I entered, exchanging glances that made my stomach tighten. "Hope, thank you for joining us," Mr. Harrison said, gesturing to the remaining chair. "We were just discussing some preliminary matters." "I'm sure you were," I replied, taking my seat and placing my grandfather's sealed envelope on the table in front of me. I hadn't opened it yet, wanting to respect his wishes about the timing. Jessica's eyes darted to the envelope. "What's that?" "Something Grandpa left for me," I said simply. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Yes, well, Robert left several personal messages. But first, let's discuss the general structure of the estate." He outlined the assets: the historic family home in Portland's West Hills, a vacation property on the Oregon coast, investment accounts, and a collection of rare architectural drawings valued at over $500,000. It was substantial, more than I had realized. "Now, to the matter of distribution," Mr. Harrison continued. "Robert's will specifies that the estate should be divided equally between his two grandchildren." "What?" Jessica blurted, her composure slipping. "That can't be right." Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. "I assure you, the will is quite clear." "But she's adopted," Uncle Philip interjected, pointing at me. "She's not a blood relative." "The will specifically names Hope Smith as a beneficiary," the lawyer replied firmly. Jessica's face flushed with anger. "This is absurd. My grandfather wouldn't have wanted family heirlooms going to someone who isn't even family." "I am family," I said quietly. "Not in any way that counts," Jessica snapped. She turned to Mr. Harrison. "I want to contest the will. She must have manipulated him when he was ill. There's no other explanation." "That's a serious accusation," Mr. Harrison replied, his tone sharpening. "It's the only logical explanation," Jessica insisted. "She spent all that time with him when he was vulnerable, reading to him, helping with his papers. Who knows what she was really doing?" The implication stung. "I was being a granddaughter," I said. "Something you apparently couldn't be bothered to do." "You're not his granddaughter," Jessica was shouting now. "You're just some random child my aunt and uncle picked up because they couldn't have kids of their own. You have no right to his legacy, no right to anything with the Smith name on it." The room fell silent. Even Uncle Philip looked uncomfortable. "Jessica," I began, my voice shaking despite my efforts to control it. "Grandpa Robert never saw me as less than family." "Then he was either senile or too kind for his own good," she replied coldly. "Either way, I demand a formal investigation into the circumstances surrounding his will. I am the only true Smith grandchild, and I won't let you steal what rightfully belongs to me." I sat there, stunned by the viciousness of her attack. This was beyond our usual tension. This was a full declaration of war. Mr. Harrison looked between us, then cleared his throat. "In light of this disagreement, I suggest we postpone further discussion. I'll need to review some matters before we proceed." He glanced at the envelope in front of me. "And I believe some additional documents may need to be considered." As we left the office, Jessica brushed past me, then turned. "This isn't over," she whispered. "You might have fooled Grandpa, but you're not fooling me. You will always be an outsider." Her words echoed in my mind as I clutched the still-sealed envelope. Whatever it contained, I now knew I would need it. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about my very place in the family I had always called my own. That night I sat on my bed with Grandpa Robert's envelope in my trembling hands. "To be opened only in the event of family dispute," the inscription read. Well, If Jessica's declaration of war didn't qualify as a dispute, nothing would. Carefully breaking the seal, I found a brief letter and a small key inside. My dear Hope, if you're reading this, then my fears have been realized, and Jessica has challenged your place in the family and in my estate. This key opens the bottom drawer of my desk in the study, the one I always kept locked. Inside, you'll find documentation that may help, along with another letter explaining everything more fully. Whatever happens, remember that family is about love, not blood. I have always considered you my granddaughter, and nothing can change that. With all my love, Grandpa Robert. The letter brought tears to my eyes, but it also steeled my resolve. The next day, I drove to the family home, using my key to let myself in. The house felt eerily quiet without Grandpa's presence. I made my way to his study, a wood-paneled room filled with books and architectural drawings. Using the key from the envelope, I unlocked the desk drawer and found a thick folder with my name on it, along with a second sealed envelope. I was about to open it when I heard the front door open. "Hello? Is someone here?" It was Jessica's voice. Quickly, I tucked the folder and envelope into my bag and shut the drawer. I had every right to be there, but I didn't want a confrontation. Too late. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" "Getting some personal items Grandpa wanted me to have," I replied, striving for a casual tone. "Nothing in this house is yours yet," she said, stepping closer. "The will is being contested, remember? You shouldn't be here taking things." "I'm not taking things. I'm retrieving specific items Grandpa left for me." Jessica's expression darkened. "You really won't let this go, will you?" "I spoke with a lawyer of my own yesterday. He says I have a strong case for being the sole heir. Adopted grandchildren don't have the same rights as biological ones in many situations." "That's not true," I countered, though in truth I wasn't certain of the legal details. "It doesn't matter," she continued, circling the desk between us. "Even if the law is on your side, do you really want to drag this family through a court battle? Think about Aunt Catherine and Uncle David. How do you think they'll feel watching you fight over Grandpa's money?" The emotional manipulation was transparent but effective. My parents had always been uncomfortable with conflict, and a prolonged legal battle would distress them deeply. "This isn't about money," I insisted. "It's about respecting Grandpa's wishes and my place in this family." Jessica laughed coldly. "Your place in this family was always charitable inclusion. Don't make it awkward for everyone by pretending it was more than that." I gripped my bag tighter, feeling the outline of Grandpa's folder inside. "I think we're done here," I said, moving toward the door. "Wait," Jessica called, her tone suddenly shifting. "Look, maybe I've been too harsh. We're both upset about Grandpa. What if we find a compromise?" The abrupt change made me wary. "What kind of compromise?" "You agree not to contest anything, and I'll make sure you get some meaningful keepsakes. The chess set he taught you on, his collection of first edition architecture books, items with sentimental value." The offer was supposed to sound generous, but it was insulting, offering trinkets while she took everything of substantial value. "I'll consider it," I said, not wanting to show my hand yet. "But I need time to think." Jessica smiled, obviously believing she had won. "Of course. Take all the time you need. Just don't contact me until you've made your decision. I prefer to handle this through the lawyers anyway." "Fine," I agreed. "I won't contact you until everything is settled." Her smile widened. "As if I'd need anything from you," she laughed. "This is just me being kind." As I left the house, clutching my bag with Grandpa's documents inside, I felt both anger and determination. Jessica thought she was being magnanimous, offering crumbs from what she saw as her rightful inheritance. But Grandpa had left me something that might change everything, and I intended to find out what it was. Back at my apartment, I opened the folder and began reading through the documents. What I found left me breathless. Grandpa Robert had indeed anticipated this conflict, and had prepared for it far more thoroughly than either Jessica or I could have imagined. The folder contained documents dating back over 60 years, beginning with a set of yellowed papers I initially didn't understand. Birth certificates, death certificates, adoption papers, none bearing names I recognized immediately. Then I came to the second sealed envelope. Inside was a lengthy letter in my grandfather's handwriting, dated just 6 months before his death. My dearest Hope, what I'm about to tell you is a family secret I've kept for most of my life. I always intended to share it eventually, but perhaps I waited too long. I am not a Smith by birth. I was born Robert Collins, orphaned at age 7 during the Depression, and adopted by Thomas and Margaret Smith when I was 9 years old. The documents you now hold are the proof. The Smiths gave me their name, their love, and eventually their architectural firm. They raised me as their own son, never once making me feel like less than their true child. They taught me that family is created through love and commitment, not merely through biology. This is why I have always felt such a special connection to you, Hope. We share the experience of being chosen, of knowing that our place in this family came through deliberate love rather than chance. What you may find most surprising is that Philip is not my biological son either. Eleanor and I struggled with infertility for many years before adopting Philip as an infant. We raised him as our son, just as I had been raised as a Smith. When he was in his 20s, he married Caroline, and they later had Jessica. Philip has always known he was adopted, though we rarely discussed it as he grew older. He seemed uncomfortable with the fact, especially after Jessica was born. I believe he wanted to feel like he had created a real bloodline for the family that had accepted him. The irony, of course, is that none of us, not me, not Philip, not Jessica, are Smiths by blood. Jessica's claim to being the only real Smith grandchild is based on a fiction. We are all Smiths by choice and by love, which to me has always been the truer definition of family. I have never told Philip that I too was adopted. Perhaps that was a mistake. But I am telling you now because I fear that after my death, your place in the family might be challenged in ways that would break my heart. The documents I've left you prove everything I've written here. Use them if you must, though I hope it doesn't come to that. In my will, I have divided my estate equally between you and Jessica, as I believe that is only fair. You are both my grandchildren in every way that matters. Remember that I love you, and that nothing can ever change the fact that you are, and always will be, my granddaughter. With all my love, Grandpa Robert. I sat back, stunned. The revelation changed everything. Not only was my grandfather adopted, but so was Uncle Philip, meaning Jessica herself was no more biologically a Smith than I was. The real granddaughter distinction she had wielded like a weapon was meaningless. Among the documents was a detailed family tree Grandpa had constructed, showing all the adoptions across generations. There were also photographs I'd never seen before, a young Robert with his adoptive parents, Philip as a baby being held by Grandma Eleanor, and more recent ones of me with Grandpa, his notes about our special bond scribbled on the back. The final document was a legal affidavit he had prepared, formally stating his wishes that I be treated as his legitimate granddaughter and heir, with detailed reasoning about our shared experience of adoption into the Smith family. It was notarized and dated just weeks before his death, when he was still entirely lucid according to his doctor's attached statements. I realize now why he had spent so much time teaching me about family history, why he had given me the journal filled with Smith family stories and photographs. He wasn't just being kind. He was deliberately establishing my place in the family legacy, ensuring I would have the tools to defend it if necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Harrison. Jessica's lawyer has officially filed to contest the will. We need to meet as soon as possible. I took a deep breath, gathering the documents into the folder. For years, I had struggled with feeling like an outsider, wondering if I truly belonged. Now I understood that my grandfather had felt the same way, and yet he had become the very heart of the Smith family, its most devoted guardian and historian. The revelation wasn't just ammunition in a legal battle. It was a profound reframing of my entire family history. What Jessica saw as a weakness, my adoption, was actually the strongest connection between Grandpa Robert and me. I belonged in this family not despite being adopted, but because of it. The next morning, I met with Mr. Harrison at his office, bringing Grandpa's folder of documents with me. As I spread them across his desk, his expression shifted from professional neutrality to genuine surprise. "This is quite extraordinary," he said, examining the adoption papers. "I had no idea Robert was adopted himself. He never mentioned it during our years working together." "Apparently, it was a closely guarded family secret," I explained. "Even Uncle Philip doesn't know." Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. "These documents change the landscape considerably. Jessica's entire claim rests on her supposed biological connection to the Smith family, which these papers effectively nullify. So what do we do now?" "We could present these immediately," he mused, "but that might simply prompt them to find another angle of attack. Jessica seems determined to contest the will regardless of the facts." He was right. Jessica's objection to my inheritance wasn't really about biology. It was about greed and her refusal to see me as family. Evidence wouldn't necessarily change her attitude. "I think," Mr. Harrison continued, "we should let them proceed with their current strategy. Once they've fully committed to the biological argument in court, we'll introduce these documents for maximum impact." The plan made sense, but it meant wading through what could be months of legal proceedings, all while being treated as an outsider by my own family. "There's something else to consider," I said. "Uncle Philip. He's Jessica's father, and according to these papers, he's adopted too. Finding this out during a court case could be traumatic for him." Mr. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. "A valid concern. Perhaps we should approach him privately before things escalate further." The next day, I invited Uncle Philip to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. He arrived looking harried, his expression wary when he saw me. "I can't discuss the estate matter, Hope," he said immediately. "Our lawyers should handle everything." "This isn't about the money," I assured him. "It's about something Grandpa wanted you to know." I slid an envelope across the table, not containing the full revelation, but a gentle introduction to it, along with a few key documents and a personal letter from Grandpa Robert to Philip that had been in the folder. "What's this?" he asked suspiciously. "Just read it, please. It's important." He opened the envelope reluctantly, his eyes scanning the papers inside. As he read, his face paled. "This can't be right," he whispered. "Dad was adopted?" "Yes," I confirmed gently. "Just like you. Just like me." His head snapped up. "How did you know I was—" "It's all in Grandpa's papers," I explained. "He left me documentation explaining the family history. None of us, not you, not Jessica, not me, are biologically Smiths. We're all Smiths by adoption and love." Uncle Philip sat back, visibly shaken. "He never told me. All these years." "I think he worried you might see it as diminishing your connection to the family," I suggested. "Especially since you've always seemed uncomfortable about your own adoption." He didn't deny it. "I just wanted Jessica to have what I didn't, a clear, unquestioned place in the family." "I understand," I said, and I did. "But Grandpa Robert believed family was about more than blood. That's why he left his estate to both of his grandchildren equally." Uncle Philip rubbed his face, looking suddenly tired. "Jessica won't accept this. She's convinced herself she's the only legitimate heir." "Then she needs to know the truth too," I said firmly. He shook his head. "Not from me. I can't be the one to tell her." As he left the cafe, I felt a mixture of sympathy and frustration. Uncle Philip clearly needed time to process this revelation, but his reluctance to confront Jessica left me in a difficult position. That evening, I received a call from Jessica's lawyer. They were escalating their challenge to the will, demanding an emergency hearing to prevent any distribution of assets until Jessica's claim as the sole biological heir could be heard. Mr. Harrison called shortly after. "They're accelerating things," he informed me. "The hearing is set for next week. We need to decide now. Do we present Robert's documents immediately or wait for the hearing?" I thought about Uncle Philip's distress, about Jessica's lifetime of believing herself to be uniquely entitled to the Smith legacy, and about Grandpa Robert's wish for both his granddaughters to share equally in his estate. "We'll wait," I decided. "Let them make their case first, but we should be fully prepared." "And Philip? Should we count on his support?" I sighed. "I think he'll stay on the sidelines. This will come down to Grandpa's words versus Jessica's claims." As I hung up, I realized with sudden clarity what Grandpa Robert had done. By leaving me these documents, he wasn't just helping me secure my inheritance. He was entrusting me with the true Smith family legacy. The understanding that family is created through choice and love, not blood. The court case wouldn't just determine who received his material assets. It would establish which vision of family would prevail. 5 months after our confrontation at the memorial service, we gathered in a downtown Portland courthouse for the final hearing. The elegant wood-paneled room felt too formal for what was essentially a family dispute, but Jessica had pushed us to this point. She sat across the aisle with her lawyers, dressed impeccably in a conservative suit, exuding confidence. Uncle Philip sat behind her, looking uncomfortable but resigned. My parents were beside me, having finally been convinced to attend after initially wanting to stay neutral. Jessica's lawyer presented their case first, emphasizing her status as the only biological Smith heir, and suggesting that my grandfather must have been manipulated or confused when creating his will. He presented a revised family tree, highlighting Jessica's direct bloodline to the Smith family, while showing my adoption as a clear break in lineage. Robert Smith's intent was clearly to keep family assets within the family, her lawyer argued. Hope Smith, as an adopted grandchild, does not carry the Smith legacy in the same fundamental way that Jessica does. When it was our turn, Mr. Harrison approached the bench calmly. "Your Honor, before I present our case, I would like to submit additional documentation that directly addresses the claims we've just heard." He distributed copies of Grandpa Robert's documents to the judge, Jessica's lawyers, and Uncle Philip. As they reviewed the papers, a wave of whispers swept through the room. Jessica's face, previously smug, gradually transformed as she read, first confused, then shocked, finally ashen. "These authenticated documents," Mr. Harrison continued, "prove that Robert Smith himself was adopted into the Smith family as a child. Further, they confirm that Philip Smith, Jessica's father, was also adopted as an infant. Neither Jessica nor Hope has a biological connection to the Smith bloodline, as no such bloodline exists in this family." The judge peered over her glasses at Jessica's lawyer. "Given this evidence, do you wish to revise your argument about biological heritage being the determinant of inheritance rights?" Jessica's lawyer stammered, clearly blindsided. Jessica herself sat frozen, the papers trembling in her hands. I met her eyes across the courtroom. For once, she had nothing to say, no cutting remark, no dismissive comment about my place in the family. The foundation of her entire claim had just crumbled beneath her. The true Smith legacy wasn't in blood but in love, exactly as Grandpa Robert had always believed. "Case dismissed," the judge declared, after Jessica's lawyers withdrew their petition. "The will shall be executed as written, with the estate divided equally between both grandchildren." Outside the courthouse, rain had given way to tentative sunshine, a perfect Portland spring day. Jessica stood alone on the steps, still clutching the documents that had shattered her worldview. When she saw me approach, she visibly stiffened. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. "You let me go in there and humiliate myself." "You wouldn't have believed me," I replied simply. "And you made it clear you didn't want to hear from me until the estate was settled." She looked away. "My whole life, Dad told me how important it was to continue the Smith family line." How I was special because I was carrying on Grandpa's legacy. Her laugh was bitter. What a joke! There is no Smith bloodline. There is a Smith legacy, though, I said. Just not the one you thought. Grandpa believed family was created through love and choice, not blood. That's why he was so accepting of my adoption. Because he was adopted too. That's the real Smith tradition. Uncle Philip approached hesitantly. I'm sorry, Jessica. I should have told you about my adoption years ago. I just wanted you to feel secure in your place in the family. By letting me believe a lie, she challenged. By letting you know you were loved, he countered. Jessica fell silent, the reality of our shared family history finally sinking in. In the end, we honored Grandpa Robert's wishes. The estate was divided equally, with Jessica receiving the coastal property she had always loved, while I took the family home in Portland. The architectural drawings we agreed to donate to the university where Grandpa had taught, ensuring his professional legacy would continue to inspire future generations. As for our relationship, Jessica and I aren't close. Too much has happened for an instant reconciliation. But at a small gathering to distribute Grandpa's personal effects, she approached me with his chess set in her hands. He taught you to play on this, she said, offering it to me. You should have it. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But it was an acknowledgement, a small recognition that we were both Smiths, not by blood, but by something far more meaningful, by Grandpa Robert's deliberate, enduring love. As I placed the chess set in my car, I found myself smiling. Grandpa had given me more than an equal share of his estate. He had given me the truth that had guided his life, that family is who you choose, and who chooses you in return. That was a legacy worth more than any inheritance, and one I intended to honor for the rest of my life.